What do we talk about? I wish we were reviewing F2. I feel like that was so much
Oh,
better.
yeah.
Those races were so much better than F1. F2 this season so far has just been absolutely banger, and
Yeah,
then we
okay.
had this pile of garbage that was the F1 race in comparison.
It was average. Come on now. Save it for the chat. There we go. That's our intro. We started. Hey.
Okay, yeah. We're talking about the Saudi F1 race this weekend, which, if you do include all that intro stuff, it was pretty mid, or some people would say it was below mid, compared to, let's say, the F2 race, which shows us that actually you can have a good race here. But if you only
we've
watch
had
F1,
good races in the past here for F1 as well, so we know we can have good F1 races.
Yeah, yep.
We just need to put it back near the end of the year, maybe. Then.
Yeah, where the stakes are high and they need to start going for
Yes.
moves. Yeah, maybe that might be the best idea. But yeah, so talk about the race. Red Bull once again show their dominance. They take out another 1-2. This time flipped. I guess we'll start with that just because, I think even both of us were expecting Max to sort of come storming up through the field. I was a bit skeptical that he'd be able to make it
I don't know
all the
about
way
both
through.
of us.
I
think I was like, he's going to do it.
Yeah.
You were like, man, I don't know. I was like, no, he's just going to...
he did. I think he got very lucky with that safety car, which is another point that we'll come on to, which I think was a very contentious issue. Boy, the FIA really did some shit this race.
That's what we can talk about.
Oh, mate, I'm so sick of talking about the FIA.
I know. No one wants to talk about it, but that's all we've got.
But yeah, the one thing I wanted to point out with Red Bull, obviously Verstappen came second from, 15th on the grid, I think he started. It's a hell of a drive, regardless of circumstances. That car is obviously insanely quick. But huge props to Perez for, it was only 25 out of 50 laps that Max made it into second, and Perez held that gap till the end of the race. His pace was still very, very good. And I always forget that Checo's really good at street circuits. Which is evidenced
Generally,
by...
yes, a lot better than the open type circuits.
Yeah. So I think fair play to him, even though there was a little bit of spiciness maybe between the Red Bull drivers and the team about fastest lap and about how fast they should be driving to the end of the race.
And some alleged drivetrain problem for Max, but that was never verified, and maybe he was just hearing something minor that actually wasn't a problem. As far as anyone could tell, that wasn't something that hampered his performance.
Obviously.
Yes, so it still gave us something to follow towards the end, and I guess there was a few other things going on, a few mystery. Would there be a penalty? Would there not? Then there was, and then there wasn't, and all of that. More related to F1 Malakry. Do we even want to go into it?
Oh, mate. I mean, I guess, we'll start off by saying, is Aston Martin good? Are they, the second fastest team? I think... I was skeptical even in that first race. Yeah, I was skeptical after Bahrain off that first race. I'm like, well, it's the one race, and
they did
track was
testing
very
here,
different.
and they could just
whatever, all that. Go back, watch that video, or listen to that podcast if you want to do that.
Yeah,
where we go into it. But this is now the second race in a row where they looked. I think they even looked comfortably the second fastest this weekend. It wasn't like, oh, you could make an argument that Mercedes were faster or Ferrari was faster, but
they got lucky with the retirement or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But it seemed I think they were comfortably the second fastest car, ahead of, funnily enough, Mercedes. I don't know what the hell happened to Ferrari. Just I don't know, man.
We don't know if they've toned everything down. I think there was some word before the race they might have been wanting to be careful and just running in training mode just so they didn't blow bits up, but then who knows, right? Kind of after the race, they were saying we're here, we made it. Well, they weren't really saying anything, while the other teams in regards to Red Bull and Aston were like, this is great, while Mercedes are like, this is shite. Ferrari were kind of like, hey, and they were just like, we've maybe been firing some people and hiring others. So it seems like they're kind of just aware that they're in this weird middle period and they're not really, going to start saying, oh no, it's fine, or oh no, it's crap. They're just like, we don't really know, but we'll let you know in a few races, maybe.
Maybe, that's very, very up in the air. I do hope they come back through, but it's kind of not looking good at the moment for Ferrari. Being even behind Mercedes at this early is not something that I think either of us expected.
Yes.
So, but yeah, Aston obviously coming out absolutely flying. Alonso got another P3, which then turned out to be P4, and then he got P3 again, and I want to talk about that in a little bit, but
yes,
just the pace of that Aston, even with Stroll before he had his unfortunate retirement.
Stroll, yes, well, he had a. They naffed the strategy bit, which I think was hard because the hards were so bad to heat up, especially I think on. Like, Mercedes really hated it, so I think the Aston being similar-ish probably also hated the warm-up, so that kind of nuffed Stroll, who was trying to pit early. But early on, his move, I don't know on which Ferrari it was, but where he overtook around the outside of the hairpin.
Yeah, that was a good move.
That was beautiful. Yeah. I was like, oh my god, like the confidence he has to go for that. That was amazing. So he's
yeah, I think it was Sainz because Charles started further back, didn't he?
Yeah. Yes, it would have to have been Sainz. You're right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was good to see that, and as I say, it was a shame that then he kind of got stiffed by the strategy, and then we didn't see how it played out because he had I didn't see what it was. I didn't look.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask you because I didn't look into it because it was just
I forgot to have a look
because like even on commentary when they were talking about it, it said maybe there was a little puff of smoke, but it didn't sound like the engine went.
Yeah, on the radio they seemed to say like we can see. So maybe it was maybe something did just go fip or come unplugged or whatever, and it's not a big issue, but it was urgent enough. They said, please stop.
The car, yeah,
so it was a shame because we couldn't see what he did, but I think he was still positive. And if we're looking, at something we came into this year saying, look, Alonso, Stroll, if that car is good, will Stroll be good enough? Still, at this point, you'd go, well, on those few laps he did have to, show his medal. Yeah. That was good.
Yeah.
So
maybe he is world champion material according to.
Yes.
I don't know about that much, but yeah, no, I would agree. I think so far, bar a couple of unlucky parts of the races for him, I think he's shown that he's well up to the fight at the moment. We'll see how that carries on for the rest of the season if he starts to maybe push a little bit too hard or get a little bit careless. It's it's one thing to be strong over one or two races, but to do it over a full season, I think is it's how you show what you're really made of.
Consistency, especially in a 26 race on calendar, I think we've got, right?
20, 20, it's not 20, it's 24, right? 23?
24
or something.
I don't know, I thought it was 26.
I'm pretty sure you're only allowed 24, right? I think that's what the
yeah.
It's
what number I got 26 from.
It's
still long. Yeah. It's the longest we've had.
Yeah,
so.
It's going to end up being 26 with the amount of races coming in. But
probably.
That's another
yes,
topic.
They'll shuffle a few in.
Yeah, so but yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just talk about the FIS stuff now, particularly with that podium that eventually ended up to be Alonso's.
Yes. Well, it started off, and I guess this is still closing the point on Aston's performance, is that Alonso's start, despite the fact we're going to that he made a bit of a driver error, which I don't think actually helped him in what happened, but he had a blinder of a start. I think something we've seen in both races is that the Red Bulls are a little slow off the start compared to others.
Yep.
And then Aston was like a rocket. Yeah. Yes, and seeing him go through and actually lead a lap or two was it's like, oh my god, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, so I guess the start of this whole thing, which is ironic because we were talking about Ocon flashbacks from last race, and it turns out it was almost moving status quo the same.
Yep.
He started, I think it was slightly too far to the left of his box, which is something that Ocon got pinged for. And it's interesting because of course, everyone's been bringing up screenshots from the past and examples of drivers even last year or before that didn't get pinged for this kind of thing. They were obviously out of it. So, I think there's been some chatter. It might be they just said, look, this year we're clamping down on it a little more just for formality, and so make sure everyone's starting right, starting safely, etc. I feel like if this has been a rule for even just last year, we would have seen it a lot more. It's not just like everyone's suddenly forgotten how to park their car properly, or they can't, see out the side.
Yeah.
So that's how he got his first penalty. They essentially said, look, you're outside your box. You got 5 seconds. He just got on with it. He said, right, understood. He knew the Checo ahead of him, and he was...
didn't even fight it. I was expecting a bit of fight back, which you'd normally expect when someone gets told about penalty. He's like,
understood.
All right, copy. So he must have known. So...
And then I think he pushed a bit to try and stay within Perez, which I think was pretty crucial because he was able to get a few laps or a few DRS zones just to keep within that, where it was Russell behind him was falling back quite rapidly. And that was primo because we were figuring with all the drivers there starting, I think they were starting on mostly on the hards? No, they were mostly on the mediums, so we knew if it was going to be a one-stop as projected, or if there was going to be a safety car, then he needed that gap to ensure he was, only going to lose one place or keep his position.
Yeah.
So he got on with it, came into the box. They, all the guys went around the car. some guy at the rear with his little jack got a little too close to the car and it kind of bumped it into position a little bit. As a caveat, the front jack is always allowed to touch the car, and the reason for that is it's actually an element of kind of stopping and lining up the car. So I think they don't say, look, don't do that if you're coming in to serve a penalty to stop. I think they say, look, that's fair enough, and as long as you're not lifting the car, it's fine. You can use it there for it to bump in, line it in.
Yeah.
So the rear jack hit the back of the car, and then do you wanna go off the second half of the story?
Yeah, well, so that was given the 10-second penalty, which, I mean, this happened so early in the race.
Yes.
And
the first we heard of it, how did we hear of it for the first time?
Was it on commentary, right?
It was on Russell's radio.
Was it Russell's radio?
His engineer went, Alonso may have a 5-second penalty coming, please push up.
Was that the first time we heard of it? Oh,
yes. And everyone went, what's that for, huh? And I know when I saw the footage of the penalty, I saw the rear jack go on and touch it a bit. And I was saying, that's interesting. I just dismissed it because no one else said anything in the commentary.
Yeah.
And I wasn't watching it live. Maybe some other people would have spotted it and gone, ooh, maybe they were naughty for that. But they didn't mention it in commentary. And it was only in Russell's radio when they basically said he may have a penalty. And then the commentators went, oh, okay. And then everyone else started to go, okay, So that's how he found out, because Mercedes found out and told Russell.
Wow.
So it was like, why is this what we're first hearing of it?
Yeah.
And then, yes, it came after the race,
which
is despite the fact
it was like
this
30,
was a pit stop.
30 laps or something.
Yeah,
and it's like,
yes.
how did they not come to that decision earlier, before they even got and they literally gave him the penalty as they were going up to the podium. So it's like they can't
down from the podium,
from the podium.
So he went to the podium, celebrated, got the trophy. On the way downstairs, basically, official came up, says, "Sorry, yoink," and they're like, "Oh, okay."
Unbelievable.
Shit.
Yeah. And then it obviously came through that Aston decided to appeal it. The way they appealed it is they showed they must have done this really quickly, possibly even during the race when they knew it was going to come up. Yes. Where they were just like, okay, we've got these 7 other examples of other teams doing this exact same thing and not getting penalized for it. And that was enough to save them from getting the penalty. So
it was a little more specific than that. So the point is that this was another thing where they were kind of smart in that they probably shouldn't have touched it with the rear jack, in fairness. However, there was a bit of a wording of, I guess, the rules to say that like an A jack is allowed to touch the car for it to be lined up when it's parking. The intention is supposed to be the front jack. However, it doesn't specify. So all the examples they showed was people serving penalties when the front jack was hitting it. They're saying, look, it's a jack here that's hitting it, etc., etc. And technically in the rules, it didn't say it's the rear jack that's not allowed to interact with it either. So by that, the FIA kind of went, okay, so I think they raised 2 things. One was the wording, which the FIA hadn't properly considered, because they have to bring up new evidence for the FIA to actually analyze. If we just say, have another look with no new evidence, the FIA goes, no, we made our decision.
Yeah.
So they brought up that wording thing, and then they also brought up the examples where they said all these penalties were served with a jack touching as per the rules. So they said, technically, okay, we can't dog you for that. And about 4 hours later, it came up, and then the result was made. And I think to Russell's credit, even though he got the 3rd, he's kind of like, look, I don't think I should get the 3rd. It feels like we got lucky, but Alonso deserves it. And even Alonso in the pen afterwards, getting interviewed, was still positive about it. He said, I think we got a penalty, the team's fighting it, but he was still like, irrespective, look at what we did, without the technicality, we're still flying high here. So
yeah, definitely.
It kind of ended positive for them all. I mean, if they don't look at the fact they were so far behind the leaders, then it's positive all around.
True, yeah. But, I think at this point, you have to be fighting for the second best team, right? Like you can't really. It's even Alonso. Alonso's one of the hardest fighters on track. Even he didn't fight when Perez decided he wanted to come back through as well.
Yes,
like he just didn't.
Bigger picture kind of thinking.
So, yeah, exactly. So he'll fight for the start because he got that launch off the line, but he's not going to fight when Perez is going to really start coming back through. So but yeah, no, I think going into that, there was a genuine chance to say he could maybe fight him and hold him, because Perez is a bit of an unknown quantity and we didn't know the true Red Bull pace. But it seemed pretty quickly once he got past, he was like, there's no point in me trying to pass him again. Yeah.
Instead, he did the right thing and he just stayed behind him to get those few bits of DRS, which was critical for everything else unfolding. Yeah. So he handled it perfectly, to his credit.
Yeah, definitely. What else do you want to talk about? Let's talk about, was it what
was the other bit of
the other FIA news?
controversy?
Yeah, so with talking of Aston, when Stroll went out and pulled his car to the side and pulled it pretty much entirely into an escape road, like almost.
He couldn't have done it better.
Literally couldn't have done it better. And we're like, okay, maybe we'll see a virtual safety car. Maybe. We might even just get away with double yellows if they're if they want to push it back in. And they threw a full safety car? Why? Like, okay, I get... So this is the reasoning they gave. And the reason I'm saying why is because they need to be smarter than this. So the reason they gave is like, oh, but the GPS thing said that the car was stopped on track, so that's why they threw the safety car.
Stopped on track required people on there to help, and they probably went, it's a...
But... How many cameras do you have around that track that they have access to? They can be like, oh, it's stopped on track. Hey, let me just look at one of these 700 cameras we've got on the broadcast. Just to confirm that it's on track before we throw the safety car. They didn't even do that. Safety car. Car's on track. Safety car. It's like, come on, man. I hate it. They're pissing me off now with this stupid decision.
To their credit, better they be oversafe than undersafe. I'm happy that at least we're annoyed because they did too much. Rather than doing like double yellows, and there might have been a car there with people flying by around the hairpin, I might have gone, "What the hell is this?" Right? We have a repeat of some nasty stuff we had last year. I suppose the year prior. So, but there's still an argument to say, sure, you have the transponder. That should then you have your people then check to see that's actually looking right, exactly. And in both of them. Yes,
it just seems like
sure if it was a bit iffy or whatever, then you could still say, "Oh well, just do it anyway." But this seemed pretty clear cut to say, even in a VSC. It's almost like zero, basically zero risk for someone to go off at any sort of speed because it was off the runoff, and they'd have to. You just go
exactly, And at least a virtual safety car is one of the reason they brought it in is because it slows them down enough, and then you can just start it up again immediately. You don't have to be like, oh no, we have to go another lap. Like everyone has to bunch up, and then you have to unlap cars, and now we have to go around another lap, and the safety car comes in, then we restart again. That's such a hassle for something where a car was basically already off the track.
Yeah.
Like, it was just so unnecessary.
There can be times when a safety car is like if they had have called it when there was really like 15 laps left, maybe that would have been a little more exciting and would be less annoyed by it. Because you go, oh, who's going to put a soft on? Who's going to, try to do something like that?
But then you get into Abu Dhabi territory where it's like, we're doing it for the show and not for the safety. Like,
no, I know. I just, sometimes you can get a nicely timed safety car. In this case, though, safety car was when everyone was going to box anyway. So it kind of took all the fun out of that regardless. There was one or two winners from that. I think Tsunoda actually won out from that.
Verstappen won out from that.
Yes, he did.
Alonso, because he served his penalty and still came out in second.
Yes, it probably would have helped him a little bit. Yeah. So, but it still took a bit of spice out because we think that changeover from medium to hard or hard to medium was going to be the interesting bit.
Yeah.
So it kind of flattened that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, if we weren't talking about the FIA enough already last year and the year prior, we ain't slowing down anytime soon.
I don't get. I just can't, man. I just need better processes, and every bit of evidence shows that they're just not doing anything to help themselves.
Yeah.
Like, I just want them to do better because it's just getting real frustrating talking about them now. But if there was anything else you wanted to talk about, I was going to touch briefly on sort of the midfield. McLaren still poopy butthole.
Well, McLaren kind of nowhere. I think to his credit, we saw a little bit of fight from Piastri, which was nice to see. He wasn't like considering how Lando had, and for people saying this shows that Piastri's ahead of Lando, there was completely different strategy circumstances going on here. It's not accurate at all. I think the fact that Piastri was thereabouts, had a good fight, got past Sargent and that, which ironic saying passing by the Williams is a positive thing for him. I think it showed that he's not, if he came last year, I'd be a bit like, oh, that's concerning. But he didn't. He kind of finished whereabouts you'd expect him to at this point in his career in that car. So I think a few thumbs up there. But that car doesn't look great. I think that was some. We're recording this a little late, but I think there was some news in the last 24 or 48 hours of the key technical engineer or something leaving. And there's like a few
James Key.
James Key, who's been pretty significant of their recent changes, and then everyone starts going, well, is Zach the problem? Is it So we'll see what happens there. But they're obviously like, this isn't like last year where it's just a slight thing we got to fix. It seems like I think we were both hoping to say, oh, it could just be something temporary, but the signs so far, they seem to be going, oh, we've made a mistake here. This is, not good.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I mean, the rest of that midfield is sort of, it's more
close
or less
again.
It's close, but it's more
I mean,
or
the
less
Alpines kind of did well to get best of the rest, but they were still like, I think they're still looking at Aston and going, really, we're still not happy with this at all.
Yeah.
We had a good fight between Magnussen and Tsunoda for the last point.
Yeah,
that was really exciting.
True.
I think, again, unlucky for Yuki not to get it, because I think he got lucky with the safety car and drove a good race, but I think that AlphaTauri really is struggling as much as the McLaren is. You'd argue it's in the fight for probably the worst car on the grid. So to his credit, Tsunoda, I think, again, another guy we're looking at a bit to say pick it up a bit. I think probably drove as well as he could. I would have been pretty impossible for him to get that point, to be honest. Magnussen did a great fight for that. So that was at least a little bit of something exciting at the end.
Yeah.
And everyone else is kind of with each other. So again, we don't really have a full back marker, but you wouldn't be surprised if it turns out that McLaren is that back marker, which is pretty.
I think it definitely
scary thought to say.
Definitely all hinges on that update that they're hoping to bring in a couple of races time. So,
but who knows if others bring an update that's just as big?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's hard to say.
So, but yeah, that's it. That's all I had. Unless you wanted to talk about anything else, I hate that literally 3/4 of this was FIA talk, but that's the nature of the beast sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah. I still enjoy this. I think some people were a bit like, oh, whatever. But I think it was your classic 3 out of 5. Like I see,
I'd say
classic 3 out of 5, which is fine, but it's not as bad as some of the 1 out of 5s we had in prior years, which is just why did I bother?
Yeah. It definitely felt like that in terms of the overtaking. It was just all done down that main straight, except for Max.
It was a little too powerful.
Yeah, he was the only one who I think managed to do overtakes outside of Stroll on that first corner around Carlos Sainz, but like he did it on the back straight before the main straight. Max
and he just that was scary. You saw his closing speed, DRS,
huge,
and like that he was past him. It was like, is Hamilton losing gears or something? No, that was. That I think that's what everyone's trying to look at. Is Red Bull seem to have something with the DRS, where even their normal speed is great. In the DRS, they seem to just get turbo mode, and everyone's like, "What is going on here?" So I don't know if it's just the overall concept. I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe saw, in the next few races when some technical people figure it out, we see a little bit of Red Bull's discovered something here. Here's Red Bull's super tricky DRS boost system, right? Something like that. So I guess we'll keep tabs on that, but the sooner others can figure something out, if there is a trick, the better. I think.
Yeah, definitely. But we'll look ahead to the next race in Australia now, coming to our part of the world. I did look at the weather for that. It's looking like there could be some rain around for that weekend.
It's been chilly, and I don't see it getting a little warmer.
All right. So yeah, we'll have to stay tuned and see what happens there. Particularly now that. We'll get into that with the preview, but with 4 DRS zones, I don't know how that's going to change things, but it'll be very interesting. So, but yeah, let us know your thoughts about this race in the comments, or even Spotify. If you didn't know, if you're listening on Spotify, you can comment on it as well. We've tried that. We had exactly 1 comment on our preview who guessed that Tsunoda would get P11. So. We're actually shutting down the comments now because you can't beat that. The very first comment getting it. So well done. Was it Matt from our little group? Is that Matt that said that?
Mattman.
Yeah. So well done, Mattman. You've won. You've won the year.
Legend.
So
#1 fan.
But yeah, thanks for watching or listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the Australian preview. Take care.
Ciao.